The theme that James Nicholson has chosen for his presentation this afternoon, Leadership and the Cross. And you might remember that he spoke yesterday about the family and the cross. This is a continuation, but into leadership. And Archbishop Chaput, who's the Archbishop of Denver in Colorado, has his picture in the front of our program for this year's convention. And just to pick out something, and I was reminded when I was reading this little bit about remarks that were made by a former Prime Minister of this country. There's a Christian fable about a man who, tired of carrying his cross, goes to visit Jesus to complain about its weight and ask if he could trade in his cross for another one. With much patience, Christ takes him into a large room filled with crosses of all sizes and types, and tells him to choose the one that he wants. So the man sets his eye on a very small cross, but when he tries to lift it, its weight is unbearable. He then chooses a very thin one, but when he tries to grab it, he finds it covered with tiny thorns. And finally, after spending several hours looking for just the right cross, he finds one sufficiently bearable and tells the Lord, "This is the cross I want to take with me." With kindness, Jesus responds, "But son, this is precisely the one you brought here to trade for a new one." Now, this fable portrays very well what often happens with our own cross. We believe it is too heavy, or we believe that God is being unfair with us, particularly when we compare our cross with someone else's. Now, the remark I made about a former Prime Minister, someone asked him once, "How do you cope with the workload?" He said, "I do it day by day." He said, "It's like lifting an elephant." He said, "Once you've got it up in the air, the secret is to keep it there by maintaining a daily effort." James Nicholson has responsibilities that are more than the weight of an elephant. How he keeps that up in the air was partially explained yesterday by his daily prayer. He spoke then of the family and the cross, today leadership and the cross. James Nicholson.
Well, good afternoon. It's great to be back with you. Someone left their rosary up here. In fact, it's missing the crucifix. I'll identify it. It's wonderful to be back. I want, first of all, to thank again Philip Sherry. You will note that yesterday I called him Kevin, and he afterwards told me that words of his demise were greatly exaggerated and were premature. So thank God he is still with us, and it's been a real pleasure to get to know him and John and Beth Portis and so many of you. Suzanne and I feel very blessed to be here. Yesterday, as we were together, I did speak of my family and the cross, the cross of my family, really, my father. And some people have asked, well, what happened to your father? Well, when he was 57, he had a massive stroke. But he lived to be 84. He never really stopped drinking, but he eventually outgrew it, ended up in a nursing home, and then at the age of 84, in the good graces of God and with the church, he died. And my mother stayed with him the entire time. She died at the age of 83. And reflecting on that time, we all do that and have regrets. And one of those that, as I matured and became more conscious of myself as an adult child of an alcoholic, I wish that we and I, as a younger person, would have done more to try to help him. There were not the treatment centers then that there are now. He had 10 siblings. None of them intervened either to try to assist him. So those are those are things, and those of you that might be suffering that today, and I know there are some of you because you've mentioned it to me, I have had some experience with interventions and with treatment facilities, and that coupled with devout prayer has helped some people, alcoholics, some in my family. So I'd say if that's something you're suffering right now, seek help, because there is some help out there. I'm also happy to say that all 7 of the children of the family, all 6 siblings, were able to forgive my dad, and I'm very happy to say that all 7 of my siblings, or all 7 of us, are in the church, are communicants in the church. One of my brothers went on to become a general in the Army. I have a sister who's a retired teacher, another sister who is a banker, I have a sister who's a social worker. All of the kids somehow got to college. 4 have postgraduate degrees, and it was very satisfying, I think, because we were able to bring to my mom and my dad a great deal of pride in their children. I mentioned as we left off that I would talk to you today in the first part of my talk about my experiences as the United States ambassador to the Holy See, or as people used to euphemistically refer as I was the President's ambassador to the Pope. And I will do that and then follow that up with some comment about my present responsibilities. And as I closed yesterday, it was said that it was on 9/13 that I presented my credentials to the Holy Father, and it was there that he gave underpinning to our response to the attacks of the international terrorists of 9/11. And what I realized very soon after being posted to Rome was that there was a wonderful opportunity for me. I was what we call a political ambassador. In the United States, we have diplomatic relations, I think, with about 190 countries, and 2/3 of our ambassadors are career foreign service diplomats, career people in the world of diplomacy, and about 1/3 are not, or we're called presidential appointments or political ambassadors. The President appoints all ambassadors, but about 1/3 are not from the career chain. I was one of those, obviously, and it soon became apparent to me that this was a very unique opportunity for me as a diplomat, as a Catholic, as an American, because I was able to practice what I called moral diplomacy, meaning that with the Holy See, with the Vatican, we, the United States, sometimes referred to as the great temporal superpower of our time, and I was the accredited ambassador of that superpower temporally to that superpower spiritually, gave me the opportunity to practice a unique form of diplomacy because we didn't have any of the normal issues. We don't have a balance of trade problem with the Holy See. We don't have a current accounts problem. We don't have any military basing issues. So I was able to manifest the #1 iterated priority of my country's statement of foreign policy. And this surprises a lot of people, a lot of Americans, so it might surprise you as well. But the #1 priority of our government is to enhance human dignity. Now, there are other ways to say that. John Paul II, in several of his encyclicals, has referred to that as the progress of man. He has on occasion did on occasion use the word dignity. But our priority is to enhance human dignity. It's to better the condition of man. It's not to be the greatest superpower on earth, the greatest military juggernaut, not to have the biggest trading account. It's to bring the condition of people up, because we have learned through our own experience that if you can make people free and you can give them hope, with legitimate aspirations of opportunity, you elevate their life, you elevate their performance, their attitude, and you elevate their freedom. And man has a penchant to be free and to be self-governing. And we of the United States have benefited from that for over 230 years, and that is what we would like among and foremost to export. So what are the constituencies of human dignity, this enhancement that we seek? Well, those that I worked on included, and foremost, religious freedom. A person does not live a dignified life if they're not able to openly profess and practice their faith, or even decide to do neither, but have the freedom to do that. And there are too many countries today in this world, some of them first world countries, some of them major emerging industrial giants that do not have religious freedom. You know them as well as I. In fact, an interesting story, once while I was in Rome, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia came to pay a visit on the Holy Father. And religious freedom is a shared value between the United States and the Holy See, believe me. It's a common priority. And the Holy Father brought up the fact that in Saudi Arabia there are too many people who cannot practice their faith, particularly Christians. And the Prince looked the Holy Father right in the eye and he said, well, he said, Your Holiness, he said, when I came into the Vatican today, he said, I didn't see any mosques. I didn't see any minarets. And the Pope was very quick and he came right back and said, well, he said, Your Highness, he said, if we had any Muslims here, you would have. And you know, the point was made in the typical poignancy and with a, you know, a tinge of good humor that Holy Father possessed. We have on occasion, one night I got a call very late at night from the foreign minister, said, I have the Holy Father on the other phone. He's calling. The president is flying to Russia. We've just had a Polish bishop in Russia that's been arrested. Could you help see that the president brings that up tomorrow with his meetings with President Putin? I was able to call Air Force One, had some conversation, and that was on the discussion agenda the next day. Our president is adamant about this basic human freedom, the freedom of religion, freedom of worship. Another that we worked on in this genre of moral diplomacy is that of a fairly recent scourge in our time, which is trafficking in human beings. And I know that many of you here, particularly those of you from religious communities, are very familiar with this, but there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people every year now in this day and age that are being transported and exploited for sexual purposes, and they are in fact slaves. They're doing it against their will. It's going on all over Europe. It's going on in my country, unfortunately. I will bet it's here. I do not know. It's 21st century slavery, and we need to stop it. And the first thing we need to do to stop it is make more people aware of it. So I worked that issue very hard. I convened a conference in Rome. We had 400 people come from 35 countries, which has resulted in the development of a syllabus that we've got both religious men and religious women now teaching a 2-week course in countries in Eastern Europe, Northern Africa, where the source of a lot of these young women are, that many of them get lured into a better life. You know, go to Rome and be a model, or go to Rome and be a waitress, or go to Paris, or go to Los Angeles. And as soon as they leave the border of their country, their credentials are taken from them, they're intimidated, they're beaten. Many of them, they try to addict to substances, and they become a human chattel. And it is a tragedy that's going on today in our time. But we ended slavery once on this planet, and we can do it again. But we must turn to do that. I'm very proud of my country our Congress, they've passed some very tough legislation. We're appraising the condition of this in other countries and publishing it every year, trying to put diplomatic pressure on countries to enact laws and enforce them against this. Another that we worked on in this, again, in the context of bringing leadership for moral diplomacy, which was leadership in the workplace. At my time, my accreditation is that of food, starvation. Every day, 800 million people go to bed hungry, either hungry or starving. And that doesn't have to be the case. There's enough food produced in the world today to feed the people in the world. It's a question of distribution and efficiency and growth and overcoming trade barriers. We in the United States have developed some phenomenal new technology in seeds for food grains. It's called genetically modified organisms, GMOs. You use them here in New Zealand, Australia uses them, Brazil, Argentina, but they do not allow them in Europe. And because of the long-standing relationship between Europe and Africa, we're having a very difficult time getting this technology into Africa. I took this issue on because, to me, it was a moral issue. And with my bilateral partner, the Holy See, I tried to bring them into the issue and the weight of the papacy, because the countries in Europe who, under the guise of food safety, would say we can't approve that food technology coming in, even though every day, every meal in America, people are consuming this. You are in Argentina, or here in New Zealand, Argentina, Australia, and no one has had a reported case of the hiccups from this food. Not one. Yet Europe is saying to Africa, don't allow this technology into your country, because if you do, you'll never be able to export into our country, into Europe. Well, the immediate problem they have is feeding their people, not worrying about exporting food grains out of their country. But once, while I was the ambassador, and I'm sorry to have to say this, but in Zambia, we were told, we, the United States, through the World Food Program, which we provide most of the food, to come and empty 2 warehouses full of food grains, mostly soybeans and rice, some corn that had been put there because some of it had been the product of genetically modified seed. And when the convoys came to haul this away, the starving people on 2 occasions attacked the convoys, broke into them to get this food. Again, it's never caused anyone 1 ounce of health deterioration. I will report to you that I worked the issue very hard. We had several conferences on it. I used to say to the people at the Vatican who wanted to sit it out because it was seen as a trade and economic issue, I'd say it's not, it's a moral issue. And anybody that dies of starvation is every bit as dead as if they died from abortion. And they did not equivocate, they do not equivocate 1 bit on that issue. But on this food issue, they did. I was satisfied to some degree when I left. The last speech the Holy Father gave to the diplomatic corps, he talked about food, and he talked about it in moral terms. So we've made progress, but we haven't gotten them off the fence and over the hill. And if they did, this resistance in Europe will evaporate. Another we worked very hard is HIV/AIDS. Every day, 25 to 30,000 people die of AIDS. What we did is we set up a test project in Mozambique, and we got 5,000 pregnant women to agree to subject themselves to our prescribed regime for these antiretroviral drugs, and we administered it to them in this real controlled manner. And through gestation and nursing of the babies, we kept the virus from transmitting to the baby in 97% of the cases. And we did that through a wonderful non-governmental organization, faith-based in Rome, called the Community of Sant'Egidio. Has anybody in here heard of that? Is that? I don't see any hands, but it's a wonderful lay organization, now has about 50,000 members, and they were our agency, and we're now trying to do it in 9 countries. I'm still involved in that, and we're trying to get the support of the World Bank. And the fifth of those moral issues that I spent my time and what leadership abilities I have as the U.S. ambassador on was, of course, that of international terrorism. And as I reported to you, we have solid support on that from the Holy See. But then there was the issue of Iraq. And let me take a couple of minutes and tell you about that, because it was a test of my leadership. I prayed about it a great deal, as did millions of people. And it came down to a question of 2 very good holy men seeing a set of facts very different. And the Pope in January of '03, in a speech to the diplomatic corps, said no to war, meaning in Iraq, and went on to say that war is a defeat for humanity. War is not always inevitable, and war should only be the last resort. Well, those were 3 exclamations with which the United States government totally agreed. We do agree. And the Holy Father was a man of peace, and we know that, and would always hold out for the peace option. But the Catechism of the Church, if you care to read it, and it's fascinating to get into these whole questions of the morality of war, but the Catechism says that he or she who is duly selected by their population must exercise his prudential judgment to decide whether his country or her country should go to war to protect the citizens. Because the Catechism, and St. Augustine wrote about this in great detail, recognizes that there are evil forces afoot in the world. We know this. There are people out there that want to bring harm to others, and those people deserve to be protected. And in the case of Iraq, the duly selected leader of the United States, President Bush, accepted the responsibility of this to his conscience, his profoundly developed Christian conscience, by the way, that we needed in the interest of our country and the protection of friends to go into Iraq. The Pope was against that. We had a great deal of diplomatic interchange. I brought several noted American philosophers and theologians to Rome to have meetings. The Pope dispatched the Cardinal to the Oval Office. I went with him, talked to the President before the war started. And what happened. On March 19th, we entered into Iraq. And the outcome is still not clear. There is some good news from Iraq this weekend, but let me tell you an anecdote. A few weeks after we went into Iraq, the leader of the Chaldean Catholic community in Iraq, there are about 600,000 Chaldean Catholics there, they've been there for centuries, came to Rome to see the Holy Father and asked if he could see me. And my wife and I received him at our residence. He came with an entourage. His name is Patriarch Emmanuel Deli II. And he thrust himself up the stairs of our residence, put out his hand and grabbed mine and shook it, and he said, "I want to thank you for coming to my country and freeing my people." Now, that was a profound statement on behalf of this prelate, because Saddam Hussein had treated the Chaldeans rather cleverly in that he left them relatively alone, didn't persecute them. But they had been put into play when combat started. Some of the churches had been bombed. And so what that meant to me was a manifest expression of the penchant that there is for people to be free and to be self-determining. And of course, I reported that to the President, And it was an encouraging event to us. And there is a great deal going on in Iraq that you don't read about in the media. When I tell you about my present job at the VA, I'm going to tell you about visiting some of our wounded soldiers and the attitudes that they have. And the number one request they have of me as the Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, which is to help them get back to their unit in Iraq. The diplomatic corps at the Vatican, which is the headquarters of our church, we learned during this conference that our church is in communion with 1.2 billion Catholics spread throughout the world, and its headquarters and its leader, its sovereign head, the successor of Peter, is there in the Vatican, which is 106 acres. I used to get teased by my fellow diplomats that I was going to be the ambassador to the smallest nation in the world. But I used to remind them that it was also the greatest spiritual superpower, probably, in the world. But its diplomatic corps is one of the oldest in the world, extremely well-trained, educated. To be a diplomat there, you have to be a priest. You have to go to the diplomatic academy for 3 years. You have to have a degree in canon law, and you have to be competent in the language of the country to which you're going to be credited. And that's just to come out and get started as a new Foreign Service officer. So it bespeaks the sophistication and the effectiveness of the diplomatic corps. The other thing that is so great about dealing with them is the fact that they have a very honest, transparent agenda. They're about truth. They're about the progress of man, as the Holy Father used to put it. They're about the enhancement of human dignity, as our statement of foreign policy puts it. And because of that, we had a great deal in common. We have a set of common values and shared goals. As a result of that, President Bush and the Holy Father ended up becoming very good friends. And President Bush went to Rome 3 times to visit the Pope, more than any other American president ever went there. And each time they had a very solid engagement, and he had a meeting with him after Iraq commenced. And it was interesting. We had of course, as you would with the president, you have quite an entourage. And went in there one morning, and somebody said, one of the cardinals, I think, that may have accompanied the president in, said, "Well, how are you feeling this morning, Holy Father?" And the Pope, kind of had his head down, and he looked up, sort of, and he said, "I don't know yet." He said, "I haven't had a chance to read the American press." But he was very fond of President Bush because of his values and his faith. The president was asked in his first campaign for the presidency, for that campaign I talked about yesterday, which was my job to win that 2000 election, said, as the press asked these people everything, and one day a reporter said to then Governor Bush, he said, "Governor, who's your hero in life?" And he answered him just like that. He said, "My hero is Jesus Christ." And that's a profound statement. We are a secular society. We have the separation of church and state, which is embedded in our Constitution and works very well. But it also is in that Constitution is a protection. It's a protection of religion. It's not a protection from religion. And the president is a man of great faith. And while he doesn't, wear it on his sleeve or use it as a shield, I can tell you that he believes to his core in Jesus Christ. He prays profoundly. When we were campaigning, there were two things he always had to have every evening wherever we ended up in his hotel room. One was a treadmill, and the other was a Bible. And it didn't matter how late we were, he exercised on the treadmill and read the Bible. So in spite of something that was strategically very illuminated and is a very important problem, that is Iraq, our two countries, because of this common desire that we have, and we have been blessed as a nation, there's no question about it, with great material, natural resources that we want to share with people for this progress of man, for the enhancement of human dignity. And it was a profoundly poignant experience to be so close and have a relationship with the Holy Father. At the time, as I said, from when it began, he was ambulatory and escorted me from the door over to his desk through that 3.5 years when Suzanne and I went in to say goodbye to him before leaving last January a year ago. And of course, he was non-ambulatory, could barely raise his head, but on that day, wanted to talk to us again about what the United States plans to do and how it plans to project its power and resources into the 21st century and into this globalizing world, as he said. And it was also profoundly poignant and had a real impact on our faith life to see this man up so close and personal and so often going through the suffering that he did, but continuing to do that and knowing that he felt, as we witnessed it, that he was carrying his cross and helping in the redemption of mankind in the capacity that he had, and the model and the visibility that he had. So it was a blessed experience, and for all of you that haven't probably had that opportunity, you can feel very proud of the church and the hierarchy in Rome of the church. We had a lot of friends who used to say, don't take that job. Don't go to Rome. Don't get that close to the governance of the church because you'll lose your faith. And that was not our experience at all. It was the opposite. Our faith was deepened. We were so respectful of the competence and the reverence and the fidelity of the people that work there. And of course, you can't be anything but impressed by the universality of our church and the relevance of our church to so many people throughout this planet. But like everything, all good things come to an end. And in fact, I used to say to the many visitors we had, when they'd ask about the job, I'd say it's one of the greatest jobs in the world, and my wife would always correct me and say, no, it isn't. It's the greatest job in the world. And I was in Miami in November giving a speech on trafficking in human beings. We spawned a Western Hemispheric conference there, and I got a call from the White House. Found out I was on that side of the Atlantic and asked if I'd come by. And the president then asked me if I would become his secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs. And that involved being confirmed by the Senate. And so I said, after talking it over with my wife, it would be an honor. I wasn't looking for further government work. Basically, have come from the private sector. But it seemed to me to be so consistent with what we have been doing, which was now a new opportunity to bring help and dignity and hopefully whatever leadership skills that God has imbued me with to this immense new huge challenge. And let me tell you a little bit about this department. I mentioned yesterday that George Washington said after we won the Revolutionary War that we need to take care of veterans. We need to fulfill this debt of honor that we have. And then Abraham Lincoln in 1865, near the end of the Civil War, said that this nation must care for him who has borne the battle and his widow and his orphan. And so those are the predicates of the policy that we have as a government about veterans. We have, as a country, have had 48 million people serve in uniform, taken the oath, gone off and served wherever we've asked them. Over 1 million have been killed in combat. Today we have nearly 25 million living veterans. And the policy of our government is a manifestation of our gratitude to these people is that anybody that has served and is diminished in any way, physically or mentally, or has fallen on hard times, indigent, homeless, drug addicted, we, the government, will take care of them if they're a veteran. So we have a huge organization. We have the largest integrated healthcare system in the United States. We have 7.5 million enrolled patients. We had 55 million patient visits last year at our facilities. We have 154 major hospitals, 900 clinics, employ about 35,000 doctors, 60,000 nurses, and our medical treatment is state-of-the-art. In fact, it is getting the highest accolades of any integrated system now in the United States because we have every patient on an electronic medical record, which gives us great accuracy, portability, and safety. So that's kind of the health side. We also have a benefit side, and we pay benefits to over 3.5 million veterans a year. And we provide, you hopefully have heard of the GI Bill, which came about after World War II. We've now sent 18 million American veterans to college. We've had over 32 million American veterans buy homes with no down payments because the loan was guaranteed by the government as a result of their service. I'm responsible for the 6th largest life insurance company in the United States today, which is a Servicemen's Group life insurance company. It is a comprehensive panoply of benefits for veterans. And then the third major leg of our responsibility is to provide them with an honorable burial place. We have 123 huge cemeteries throughout the country. Every day now in America, 1,800 veterans die. 1,100 of our World War II veterans die every day. We had 16 million of them. We now have 3.5 million, and they're leaving us quickly. And we're putting up new cemeteries, and we're putting them in places that are visible for other Americans, because most Americans now have never served in the military. So we want these cemeteries to be very visible so that people can see them and hopefully can learn and appreciate better the contribution of the people that are buried there to our country and to the freedom that we continue to have as a result of their service and their sacrifice. Over the door of most of our hospitals, there's an epitaph that says, "Enter here to witness the cost of freedom." And when you go into one of our hospitals, you will see people that are suffering a great deal, including today because we are at war, and we have the new phenomena of combat. We have these bombs that they're putting out in Iraq and Afghanistan, and our young people are being hurt with great percussion, but they have good body armament, and they have excellent, fast medical evacuation. So we're saving a lot of lives of people who in previous wars would be dead. But they're very injured, loss of limbs, brain trauma. And we're taking care of them in 2 major hospitals in Washington, and my wife and I go there regularly. We also have great programs for rehabilitation of them to get out and try to put the emphasis back into their life, to try to restore that dignity as a human being, even though they may be now missing limbs, but they're still valuable people. And we try to get them on a ski slope or in a swimming pool, any way to put ability back into the word disability. So recently we were doing that, and a wonderful VA employee started a program 20 years ago of getting people out to exercise in the outdoors in the snow and skiing and sled hockey. And they did a survey of over 400 of these now young wounded warriors, heroes we call them, and to ask what motivates you most to conjure the courage to overcome your disability, to try to reach a new plateau and a new level of meaning in your life. And the answer, the predominant answer of those young people was God. And we went on to ask them about their outlook as a result of this traumatic injury that they have suffered, loss of limb, and often sight, hearing, brain damage. And the vast majority of them, I think because of this predicate, this placement that they've put themselves in God's hands, have said that they think that they're now better people as a result of that. And it is heart-rending to see that, given the condition of some of these people. And makes one, if you ever had a penchant or a predisposition to feel sorry for yourself, you'd quickly get over it by dealing with these young people. We also, in America today, among our veteran population, have a epidemic of diabetes. Over 20% of our veterans have diabetes, and we have initiated a major new program to overcome this because it unfortunately is a product of lifestyle, not enough exercise, improper diet, and we're going to turn the corner on that as well. And the job that I've been given by the President and by the Congress is to lead this wonderful organization of dedicated people, 235,000 of them, professionals, doctors, some of the preeminent doctors in the world, nurses, people who clean rooms, who have one thing in common, and that is to take care of our veterans, to give them care with competency and compassion and dignity. And that's the least that we owe them. Our feeling, we are aware that wars do have beginnings and they do have endings, praise God, but the responsibility for caring for those that have fought them, in our view, never ends. And so, for me, as I reflect now in this position of leadership, given you know a bit about where I've come from to get to this job, I find myself continuing to pray fervently that God would give me the wisdom and the grace to effectively lead this huge organization, to serve and bring dignity to all of those that we're caring for, as well as their families and their loved ones, because they too are very seriously affected by the condition in which they found themselves. And again, you know, the dichotomy that all of us lay people particularly are up against confronts me daily, especially the lack of time that I have to try to do the praying and contemplation and thinking about God that I would like to do, makes me dedicate more than I used to the thought that, well, I'm working, I'm not praying, I'm trying to make things better, for some of God's children, and hopefully I'll get some pray credit for that and help in a different way. And it bespeaks again, I think, the conflict, the conundrum that we have as lay people in our church who want to answer the call to holiness, yet to have that tug, that secular tug on us from our regular world and all the things that are in this world, many of which in this secular world are tugging against us in the other way, in the other direction. And I think I'll end with a few words, from the Holy Father in his call to holiness, when it was pointed out that this actually came from Lumen Gentium, which swept away several centuries of the relegation, really, of lay people to a more minimalistic status vis-a-vis our clergy and its spirituality. And it said, "It is therefore quite clear that all Christians in any state or walk of life are called to the fullness of Christian life and to the perfection of love. And by this holiness, a more human manner of life is fostered also in earthly society." That's us lay people. "In order to reach this perfection, the faithful should use the strength dealt out to them by Christ's gift, so that, following in his footsteps and conformed to his image, doing the will of God in everything, they may wholeheartedly devote themselves to the glory of God and to the service of their neighbor." Thank you again for having us, and God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.